And we are live.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Vice President of Student Services Forums for San Diego City College. My name is Genevieve Esquera, and I'm the Associate Dean of Outreach and Community Relations here at City College, and I will be moderating the forums today. We're delighted to have Mr. Nick Mata here to join us today for this Vice President of Student Services Public Forum. And before we begin, let me take a moment to review the ground rules for this forum. Each candidate will have 45 minutes for their forum, and time will start when they begin their opening remarks. Each candidate will provide brief opening remarks of up to 5 minutes. We've solicited feedback from our college community and have received a variety of questions in advance of today's forum. Of these questions, 6 were selected to ask of each candidate. We will not be taking questions during the forum. All questions must have been submitted prior to today. We will provide a timing cue at the 20-minute mark. And 5 minutes before the end of the session, we will ask the candidate to provide brief closing remarks. Your feedback is important. To submit your feedback for Mr. Nick Mata, please go to the link displayed on the screen. Once it displays, you'll see the link on the screen. Thank you. The feedback form will be open until 3 p.m. today, so please complete the brief survey right away. Again, this survey will close today at 3 p.m. We thank you all for joining us, and let us begin. Our next candidate today is Mr. Nick Mata, Interim Dean of Special Programs at Santa Monica College. Mr. Mata, it is our pleasure to invite you to provide a brief opening statement.
Great, thank you, Genevieve. Good morning. It is truly an honor to be here with you today to share a little bit about myself, my experience, my qualifications, my motivations, and my passion that brings me in front of you today as a candidate for the Vice President of Student Services at San Diego City College. I come to you with 24 years of experience in higher education, 17 of those years specifically in the California Community College system as an administrator and as a manager. I actually began my tenure in the California Community College system within SDCCD at San Diego Miramar College, where I was the TRIO programs manager, overseeing our student support services program. I also had an opportunity to co-write an Upward Bound grant with our then Dean of Student Affairs. So I oversaw two TRIO programs at that particular institution. When our dean went on to another professional opportunity within the district, I was selected to be the interim dean of student affairs and matriculation at Miramar, overseeing a majority of the matriculation functions, in addition to advising the associated student government, student clubs and organizations, coordinating our commencement ceremony, and also overseeing our student conduct process. One of the accomplishments that I'm really proud of is establishing the outreach office at San Diego Miramar College, not only hiring the team members that would work within that particular space, but also creating the physical space in order to allow Miramar to really grow their outreach component to help meet their enrollment management goals. From there, I went on to other professional opportunities within the California Community College system. I moved up to Los Angeles to Pasadena City College, where I was the Director of Student Support Services, overseeing our TRIO grants, working collaboratively with our other TRIO program directors to literally bring all of our TRIO programs under one space to help really build that college-going pipeline for underserved student populations, not only at the middle schools, but the high schools and Pasadena City College. That experience led me to the Dean of Special Programs at Los Angeles Southwest College in South Los Angeles, overseeing 5 TRIO grants and really also creating that particular pipeline. I also had the opportunity to serve as the Associated Student Government Advisor, overseeing student clubs and organizations, and also assisting with student conduct and behavior intervention there as well. And that all led to my current position at Santa Monica College, where I've been for the last 7.5 years, and where I serve currently as the Interim Dean of Special Programs, overseeing 11 different programs. They're either counseling support programs or empowerment programs for special student populations. That includes EOPS, CARE, CalWorks, Guardian Scholars for current and former foster youth, our DREAM program and DREAM Resource Center, our Black Collegians Umoja Community, Latino Center, Adelante program, our PICO partnership, which is a partnership we have with the city of Santa Monica, our Law Pathway program, which is a pipeline for underrepresented students to get into law school and the legal profession. And then our newest program that I'm excited that we just launched this semester, which is our Rising program for formerly incarcerated and system impacted students. So I've had great opportunities at the institution to serve in our shared governance process, serving on various committees, including our program review committee, our campus redesign committee, which is designed to implement our guided pathways framework within the institution, also serving on curriculum committee. And I've been one of the co-leads on our Student Equity Center Advisory Committee. Our institution is forming a new Student Equity Center, which will open live once we're back fully to on-ground operations. And that will include 4 pillars, which is our Dream Resource Center for undocumented students, our Pride Center, our Racial Equity Center, and our Gender Equity Center. I am a higher education professional that is committed to student equity, student access, and student success. I've committed a majority of my career to working in equal opportunity programs and really helping students be successful. I know from firsthand experience, being a former low-income first-generation Latinx student going to a predominantly white institution, I know how education can change lives because it did it for me, it did it for my family, and I know it's going to do it for my son as well. And so being able to be a part of that process for another student and their family and their circle of influence is what gets me up every morning, is what brings me to the table to really work to create equitable and student-centered practices at the institutions that I have worked with. So with that, I know there are a series of questions, so I will stop there and we can get into the questions.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move on to the questions now. First question, what do you believe are the most critical issues community colleges will face in the next 2 to 3 years?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, the answer to this question, I think, would have been slightly different 20 months ago, pre-pandemic, right? But the COVID-19 pandemic has really shifted the work that we do within higher education, especially at the community college level, and specifically within the California community college system. We are so fortunate to be in such a wonderful community college system within California, being led by our chancellor's office. But over the next 2 to 3 years, there are some critical things that institutions are really going to have to face. The first and foremost that's on everyone's mind is enrollment and getting students back to campus. Colleges all across the state are really dealing with this. I know San Diego City College, from what I see on your website, there's some really great campaigns of trying to get students back onto the campus, trying to get faculty, classified professionals, and staff back to working on ground as well. So working on that enrollment piece is going to be critical in the next 2 to 3 years, because not only did we see a lot of students drop out, and the data shows that a majority of those students were Black and Brown students, we're going to have to do a lot of work to really work with those particular populations and give them incentives, let them see the power of what it means to come back and pursue their education and continue their education. So definitely, going back to those relationships that we built with the K through 12 system, looking at those relationships with our non-credit partners, our continuing education, our College of Continuing Education, and also the partnerships that we have developed within industry to see where we can really help the college increase its enrollment, so we can really move the work of the college forward. The other thing that we're going to have to really understand that the last year and a half has been very traumatic for everybody, right? Being in this pandemic, and so students are coming to us with different priorities. They may have lost their job, may have lost loved ones, either to COVID or to other concerns. And so that is really creating an opportunity for us to be more than just a place where a student gets their education. And we've seen that over the last 5 to 10 years, that community colleges are really stepping up to the plate to help students with their basic needs. And I think that's going to be even more critical now in the next 2 to 3 years. So students coming to our campus, facing food insecurity or housing insecurity, needing connections to mental health resources. Those types of wraparound services, in addition to the educational planning and the wonderful support programs that the institution offers and the wonderful rigor and academic preparation that the institution offers, are going to be great, but they need to be complemented by other services that will help the student be successful. We realize that life does not stop because a student is in school, and so we need to provide that additional support. In my experience, I have worked over the last many years really making sure that our students have those basic skills and needs met. I currently do sit on our Basic Skills Needs Committee, where we've coordinated our weekly food drive. We opened up our brand new centralized food pantry called the Bodega. EOPS was actually the first place at Santa Monica College that established its own food pantry. We had literally this cupboard. Staff were donating food, and it was through that initiative within our space, within the leadership of the team in the EOPS and Guardian Scholars Office, that started this initiative. And now we have this weekly food pantry that students can take advantage of, and this new centralized food pantry. So, I'm definitely looking at our enrollment picture for the next 2 to 3 years. How do we continue that outreach, that relationship building and connecting to our partners and stakeholders that will help that enrollment growth? And how do we continue to support students that will be coming back to our institution, or that will be continuing with us, that do have basic needs that need to be met so they can be successful both in and out of the classroom?
Thank you. Your next question. Mental health issues are growing at a tremendous pace locally, statewide, and nationally. How do we as a community college keep pace with this growth while ensuring students, faculty, and staff have the mental health resources they need?
That's a great question. When I began at San Diego Miramar College back in 2004, when I was serving as interim dean of student affairs, we were seeing the rise of the need for mental health support for our student population. And so I was working with then Vice President Peter White, and we were trying to find ways to provide this support. And so we found funding to get a mental health counselor. We were trying to find space. But at that point, right, it was literally kind of band-aiding all of this stuff together to provide that support. Here we are almost 20 years later, 17 years later, and mental health services is needed more now than it ever was, especially coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are finding that students are on our campuses with a lot more stressors in their life. And sometimes those stressors manifest themselves in the classroom or when they're visiting a student services department. Sometimes there's a break or a breakdown, and that connection, that resource is definitely needed. Our mental health services, our psychological services, our wellness programs, whatever you want to call them, on our respective campuses are working hard and they're at capacity. So that's one of the first challenges that we have to deal with, is that if a student were to walk into, I would say, a majority of the mental health or wellness centers on our respective community college campuses, they're probably going to find a 2 or 3 week wait before they can see a mental health counselor, unless they're in crisis, obviously, right? There's a separate protocol for that. But knowing that, right, there's 2 things that need to happen. One, we either increase the number of professional therapists that we have on our team to meet that demand, which if that currently isn't in the college's budget, is a little bit difficult. But what can also happen is we need to strengthen our partnerships and collaboration with community mental health partners, so that way we can make those referrals on demand if the capacity isn't available within our own resources. Because the reality is, whether it's low-level mental health support, right? Students may be just dealing with some anxiety, maybe some depression, or maybe they're just having issues balancing life and work and everything else that's going on. That student may be able to wait a week, until they can see someone. But other times we want to get students in and be able to do that more developmental mental health counseling, as opposed to always feeling like we're always in triage, we're always in crisis because of the mental health needs within our respective centers. I think building those partnerships with our mental health community making sure that we have the ability to build that. I've had the opportunity to serve on our care and prevention team, which is our behavioral intervention team at Santa Monica College, where we look at cases that have been brought forth to either student judicial affairs or directly to the care and prevention team, addressing stressful or distressed behavior of students, whether it be in the classroom or in various departments. And it's a team of about 20 individuals from all across the campus that look at individual cases, look at the behavior, and decide what is the most effective treatment or supports that we can provide this student to help them be successful. Sometimes that means meeting with the student and saying, maybe it's time that you take a break so you can get the support that you need. Maybe it's an emergency situation where we do have to temporarily suspend the student because the behavior is very alarming or threatening to others or to themselves. Or maybe it's just, getting them connected to special support programs that already exist at the institution to help them build community, to help them, get support, whether it be academic support or even counseling support to help them be successful. But it's through those partnerships, it's through that ability to work with the other individuals on our campus, identify the needs that exist, and be able to support students in that process. And if I could add one more layer as well, part of the care and prevention team and part of the work I've done over the last 7.5 years at Santa Monica College is also finding ways to support our classified professionals and our faculty that have had interactions with students that have been a little distressing, because that causes stressors for my team members as well. And they need support through this process, especially if in the classroom there has been an incident where there was a nervous breakdown or a breakdown of some sort, or maybe some type of attempted violence. That's very triggering. That can be very traumatizing for students in a classroom setting or in the lobby of your financial aid office or whatever the case might be. And so that support has to be there, not only for the student who's going through that particular crisis, but also for anyone else, any other team member that maybe had to experience that.
Thank you. Your next question. What are the 3 most important items you consider when making budget allocation decisions?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of working with budgets, since I started in higher education. And currently in my current position, I oversee budgets totaling close to $3 million, including an allocation from our Student Equity and Achievement Program to help support special programs. Majority of the funding that I've overseen has been grant funded or state categorical funding. And so all of those funds come with restrictions, and they come with guidelines that have to be implemented. And so, I am committed to an ethical, transparent budget process. I truly believe that, we are stewards of tax dollars. And so we have to make sure that we're spending the money in accordance to the guidelines that the state or the federal government has outlined for us. So the 3 things that I look at when I'm doing budget allocations or making budget decisions, first and foremost is making sure that the funding, the expenditures within those respective budgets are meeting the guidelines set forth with those respective grants. So making sure that we're spending them on expenses that we are allowed to spend them on. Now, majority of budgets are top heavy, meaning majority of the budgets are 85 to 90% salaries and benefits. And so for the most part, that doesn't leave a whole lot to do a whole lot of other things. But the fact that majority of the budgets are on salaries and benefits means that that's where the commitment is. The commitment is to the team that is being employed to implement the grant and the outcomes and the objectives of that particular funding source. So that first process is just making sure that those budget decisions are being made in conjunction with the guidelines of that particular grant or funding source. The next thing is making sure that any budget decisions are linked back to departmental planning, institutional planning, and district goals. And so making sure that those funding expenditures are also being linked back to help meet the institutional goals, whether it be student equity, student access, increased learning within the classroom or within co-curricular engagement. So making sure that it definitely meets those particular parameters, and that it's done consistently, right? That the funding expenditures are helping the department or that particular area meet those particular goals. And the third thing, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is really being transparent in the budget process. I am not the type of manager or leader that doles out money as an allowance, right? It's not, these aren't pots of my money for me to say like, okay, you get $5 to do this and you get $10 to do this. That's not how this works. This is money that belongs to all of us. It belongs to the institution. It is given to us by taxpayers to say, hey, we want you to use this to meet your institutional goals. And so I share those budgets. I let them know, how much we have to spend on certain expenditures. When ideas come to me from team members to say, hey, can we do this? And I'd be like, you know what, that's a great idea. I think we can. Let's go back and look at the regulations and see if we can fit that in. The nice thing is having worked with the Chancellor's office for, the last 17 years, and the leadership obviously having changed multiple times in that particular time. But right now, the Chancellor's office is in this stage where they're really not really giving us local control. They're giving us structure for our funding sources, but they're saying, you know what, it's a local decision of if you feel you need to make a budget modification to how an expense is made, if you feel it's going to help you meet your institutional priorities. And so being transparent, sharing that information with the team members that are involved within that particular funding source, and really making sure that that information is shared widely, not only with the institution, but also with administrators that are also partaking in those budget decisions. So again, a fully fair and budget transparent process, and really making sure that our budget expenditures are linked back to institutional goals and priorities and to long-term planning.
Thank you. And you have about 25 minutes left in your forum time.
Thank you.
And then we'll go to the next question. Students have traditionally had a hard time navigating systems stemmed in white supremacy, especially first generation Black and Brown students. How have you helped students combat bureaucracies within the educational system?
Yeah, great question. Having worked in equal opportunity programs for almost 20 years now, working with students, and again, working specifically with Black, African-American, Latinx students to help them understand the bureaucracy of the educational pipeline has been one of my grounding foundations for me and why I do the work that I do. I share this story. When I was an undergraduate, I went on academic probation, and it was a student affairs professional who reached out to me because she saw this look on my face of, I think it might've been despair. It might've been like, okay, I just screwed this up. Like, I'm gonna have to go home. I've disappointed everyone in my family, everyone in my circle. And it took someone just to sit down and say, hey, are you okay? And me feeling comfortable to kind of open up and say, no, I'm not, I need help. And it was this one interaction, with this student affairs professional who really helped me break down the barriers, funnel through the bureaucracy. And again, that's what leads the work that I do today. Having worked, especially the last 7.5 years at Santa Monica College, with the student populations that I work with all of my specialized programs. And even though I'm a dean, I still have a lot of face-to-face interaction with students, and really helping students navigate the policies that exist at Santa Monica College, that a lot of them which are rooted in white supremacy, even if the intentionality may not have been there, but that root is there. And so helping my Black and Brown students understand why certain professors treat them the way they do in their classrooms, right? Help them understand what microaggressions are. We dealt with a situation a few years ago where there was a math instructor. We found out from some of our Black and Brown students that there was a math instructor who was testing Black and Brown students on the first day of class to see if they truly were at the level to be in that respective class. And so, getting together with colleagues who shared this information with me and working with the math department to say, hey, you know what? This can't happen. This is a violation of that student's right. They've been placed and assessed in that particular class, so they have the right to be there. Working within my shared governance committees, really making sure that I'm not only a voice for my areas and my departments, but a voice for the students within those respective programs. One example is in developing, working on our guided pathways model. We're developing student care teams in which every student coming through our guided pathways would have a student care team comprised of 5 individuals that would be kind of their support team to guide them through that meta major, or what we're calling areas of interest. On that student care team would be 1 peer navigator. So the discussion came about of, well, we want to hire these peer navigators. We want to pay them for their time, right? Because they're contributing to that. So then the question came up, well, how can we pay for undocumented students to be peer navigators? Because we have wonderful undocumented students who maybe don't have a work permit to work on a campus. And there's a current rule on campus also that a student has to be full-time in order to get student help, which is paid from out of the department. And so when our data shows that 70% of our students are part-time students, right, that eliminates a large pool of students, a lot of which who are also undocumented. And so it started discussions with human resources and other individuals that could potentially, look at new ways, maybe restructuring this policy so that more of our students, more of our Black and Brown students can take advantage and participate in these types of decisions that are being made and that they could be a part of. Part of my job also is when I'm in meetings or in spaces where I do hear things that are racist or maybe rooted in racism or white supremacy, is being able to either call them in or call them out, and being okay with one of those things, right? Having a call in with a colleague and say, hey, you said something in this meeting, can we talk about that? Because it's not sitting right with me. Or in some situations, it has to be a call out. And there are ways to do that and still have a collegial environment and have a discussion where ultimately, things can start changing, because it's the silence that perpetuates the white supremacy and perpetuates the issues that have entered and have consisted at our institutions. But it's not until we as a collective say, this is not a value that we espouse, this is not a value of our institution, and we want to change that. And that's part of that process. And that's the majority of the work that I've done over the last 17, 20 years working in higher ed.
Thank you so much. Your next question: how would you work with student services and instructional services to increase enrollment, retention, and completion?
Yeah, great question. Currently at Santa Monica College, I sit on our strategic enrollment management committee, and we are currently working on our enrollment management plan through 2027. And enrollment management is not just the job of the admissions office or even student services, right? Enrollment management is an institutional commitment, because not only do we have to bring students in, but we have to retain them, we have to help them be successful and persist, and we have to help them meet their educational goal. And this is really going to come into play when the student-centered funding formula goes into effect in 2024. And we're going to, funding is going to be tied to those outcomes. And so it's not just enough anymore to bring them in to get butts and seats, and then that's how we're going to get funding from the state, right? Now they're going to be looking at our particular outcomes. And so we need to be working with our partners on the instruction side, really working with faculty to understand that, yes, we know you have a heavy lift. You have to teach the curriculum. You have to maintain that there's academic rigor, and you have to make sure that students are completing your particular coursework. But we also need your support to refer students back to student services. So if you're finding students are needing additional support or wraparound services to help them be more successful in your classroom, we need that partnership. We need to hear from you. At Santa Monica College, we implemented about 3 years ago Starfish. And so we use that as our early alert system. So that way faculty members have a way to notify student services, particularly our counseling department, that a student in their particular class is having an issue, or maybe isn't succeeding as well as they could, and maybe needs to be referred to tutoring, or maybe needs to be referred to a wellness counselor, or needs to get connected to a special program. And so when those flags are raised within Starfish, we've tied it to where if one of those students is also connected to a special program, so let's say a math instructor flags a student because they're not doing so well in their particular class, we see the flag within Starfish and we see, oh, this student is also in our Black Collegians program. So then our Black Collegian specialist will assign that flag to a Black Collegians counselor, and then that counselor reaches out to the student to say, hey, how can we help you, right? But we've also set up Starfish to where a student can flag themselves. If they're feeling something and want to get connected and don't know how, don't know what office to step into, they can log into our SMC portal and go within Starfish and be able to flag themselves and say, hey, I need help with financial aid, or I don't know about how to transfer. And then somebody will reach out to them. So having that early alert system, really collaborating with the instruction side to kind of create that wraparound service to help with that enrollment piece. Because we know, and the data shows, that if a student drops out or stops out, the chances of them coming back are very slim. And we really want to make sure we don't want them to get to that point, right? We want them to engage so we can provide them services, provide them correct information on their counseling, right? Maybe they don't need to drop out. Maybe they just need to drop their load to something's a little bit more manageable. So really creating those partnerships on the instruction side. But I think also in regards to enrollment, completion, and persistence, really making sure that we are including, there are great supports and there's great things going on at the institution, but we also have to realize that engaging a student will help them be successful. So engaging them in student clubs and organizations, or to special programs, and making sure that they're getting the resources they need. Oftentimes we see students, right, maybe they haven't completed the financial aid process, or there was a verification and they've just ignored those emails because they don't know what it means. Getting into those, making those interventions so that way a student gets everything that they need. And going one step further as well, part of this whole process is we need to start incorporating and including the families and the circles of influence of our students, because that's the support they have outside of our institution. We're going to provide them great support, but if their circle of influence doesn't also know what they're going through and doesn't have an idea of what it means that the student is going through while going to a college, it's going to be a lot harder for them to explain that. And so, having family nights and having parent nights and having events where, parenting students can bring their kids, those are the types of things that really put the community back in community college. And that's really vital, is to let the student know that we see all of them, all parts of them, and we want to help them be successful as part of this enrollment management plan, both on the student services side and the instruction side.
Thank you. Your final question. Student services faculty and staff work with all San Diego City College students and have a unique perspective. How will you ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
This is a great question, because at the heart of the California community college system is our shared governance model, right? The fact that all constituent groups, faculty, classified professionals, students, managers, and administrators have an opportunity to come to the table, discuss the governance of the institution, to discuss potential policy changes or recommendations that will influence the way the institution operates. And that's great. That is wonderful power. And at the heart of that is that everyone has a voice to contribute, to share their thoughts, and ultimately that some form of consensus is going to come out of that. That's at the heart of that. Now, having been in the community college system long enough, that's the heart, but it may not necessarily be the practice. And that's okay. But I always enter my shared governance environments, whether it be sitting on committees, or whether it be, even hiring committees, which, is technically a shared governance process because we have representation from multiple angles. The most important thing is that we as an institution have to commit to go into this decision-making process with collegiality, with mutual respect for others' opinions and voices, and understanding that while my particular idea or my particular preferred outcome may not be what is ultimately the decision, but I need to trust and understand that being invited to the table to contribute is a huge process and a huge part of that. What's critically important is making sure that we include the student voice. We really want to include, while they are technically a constituent group to be included in the shared governance process, sometimes that's the one group that is accidentally or unintentionally or intentionally sometimes left off. And we really need to make sure that they are included. And, yes, scheduling a student to be on a committee is a lot more work because their schedule is very crazy, but we need to be intentional and we need to make sure that we're including that. And being okay with, a decision maybe having to be slowed down until we can get all the constituent groups at the table to discuss that. This work is very critical. The work that we do as an institution, we want to hear everyone's voices, and no more is that more critical now as colleges start their gradual return to on-ground working or working on a campus. We're going through it now, and I know San Diego City College is doing it as well. We've gradually brought back classified professionals and managers. We started slowly opening up some student services areas. We have some on-ground class footprint. We're working out on bringing instructional and counseling faculty back. And now is the time for this shared governance model to really be put into place and get everyone's voices, because there are fears about being back on ground. We're not fully out of this pandemic. Those fears are understandable and they need to be heard. But we also need to understand that getting back to on-ground operations is critical as well. Personally, I see it as an equity issue. A lot of our students who dropped out during the pandemic, a lot of our students that completely dropped out were Black and Brown students who didn't have their community. They didn't have their space. They didn't have the place where they could come and study or be engaged with other students or to visit their special program or be involved in their particular club. And those are the things that they missed. And as a result, it couldn't going to school remotely didn't work for them. And so they dropped out. And so those are the students we need to re-engage. And so if we look at the fact that, okay, reopening our doors, increasing our on-ground operations is an equity concern, it's an equity issue, then that puts a new light on it, right? That puts a new spin. And while I want to bring students back and I want to create that campus feel again, I also need to listen to my team. I need to listen to my classified professionals and my faculty and say, we still have concerns about being on ground and working with other people. And I'm like, I get that. So let's discuss what safety protocols, what measures, what phased in approach do we need to include in order for my team to feel safe to come back, for students to feel safe to come back, but yet we can start building back that community that our students, especially our disproportionately impacted students, truly need in order to continue and pursue their educational goals.
Thank you, Mr. Mata. At this time, I'd like to invite you to make your closing remarks.
Sure, thank you. Again, this was really great. Thank you so much for inviting me to this level. It's been really great answering these questions, which were really great questions. So thank you very much from the San Diego City College community for wonderful questions. if I could just leave you with a couple thoughts today, hopefully you've had an opportunity to kind of hear from me and kind of hear a little bit of my experiences and my philosophy of what guides my work on a daily basis. If you would love to see more about my actual experience, my LinkedIn profile is there on my Zoom background. You're more than welcome to visit that and see what my true experience is. But I want to leave you with this. I'm a leader within the California Community College system for the last 17 years. I've had opportunities to have wonderful experiences at multiple community colleges, both single district and multi-district community college systems. And so I do have an understanding of how the community college system works. I've had wonderful experiences within student services to oversee virtually every student service department at some point in my tenure as an administrator and manager in the California Community College system. I believe in the shared governance process. I believe in the ability to bring individuals together to make decisions that are best for the institution, but most importantly, that benefit students and benefit students' success at the institution. I believe in the student voice in our shared governance process. Having advised the Associated Student Government at 2 different institutions, I believe in understanding that the students have a lot to say and they have a lot to contribute to the way the college operates, to new ideas on how to be innovative, and not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. And having those voices at the table is critical. I've also had experience overseeing student conduct, working on behavioral intervention team, also working with human resources in Title IX. I currently serve as a Title IX deputy. And so understanding those processes to provide support for students, faculty, and classified professionals that need support if they're going through any of those particular processes. But most importantly, I'm a higher education professional that is committed to student equity, access, and inclusion. I've worked within equal opportunity programs for many years, working hand in hand, not only with my colleagues to serve students, but also working directly with students. In my time, I have bought groceries for students that were in need, right? I've sat with a student in my office when they were crying because they were thinking they might have to drop out of school because they had no other way of paying for it because their job working in a downtown sweatshop was going to end. I've had those experiences. And so those experiences bleed into my heart and they bleed into who I am as a person. And they remind me of my upbringing and my roots and why I do the work that I do today. Again, I always tell people, I didn't choose this career chose me. And it chose me that day when that student affairs professional at my college reached out to me and said, I see you need help. How can I help you? And so that is what guides my work today. The opportunity to build my team, to give my team the tools and support they need so they can reach out to other students, to their students and say, how can I help you? And how can I help you be successful? So with that, I say thank you. And I truly have appreciated this opportunity. And I wish you all the best of luck. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mata, and thank you everyone who are joining us on our YouTube channel for joining us in this forum. Once again, your feedback is very important. To submit your feedback for Mr. Nick Mata, please go to the survey link displayed on the screen. All electronic surveys for this candidate must be completed by 3 p.m. today, so please complete the brief survey right away. Again, the survey will close today at 3 p.m. and college leadership will be reviewing all of the comments submitted today as part of their deliberations. Again, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our Vice President of Student Services forum.